Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking you through the books that I read in the month of March and then April. I had like an okay reading month in March. A lot of stuff was happening, and then considering I was sick for 2 weeks of April, I feel like I did a lot of reading in April. And when I was sick for 2 weeks, I couldn't keep my eyes open or like concentrate on audiobooks. And so I just basically didn't read anything for the first half of the month. So I'm very, very happy with my reading last month. But first, I'll tell you about the books that I read in March because I haven't mentioned those ones yet. So first up, I read Dear Dolly by Dolly Alderton. I listened to the audiobook for this. This is non-fiction and it is a collection of Dolly Alderton's column entries or column articles, I should say. It's basically an advice column that Dolly Alderton does or did, and the criteria for this book is very, very broad, so it hits a lot of different topics and audiences, but I really love this. I don't know, there's just something about Dolly Alderton's non-fiction specifically that really hits me, and I feel like I always read them at the right time when I either really need it or I don't know that I need it, but I do. And that's what happened with Everything I Know About Love, and then that's what happened with this one as well. And if you liked Everything I Know About Love, I think you'll probably enjoy this one as well. Then I reread Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is the first in the series, and this reread was so much fun. I really need to finish this series that you'll see soon in my series I'm in the middle of video, and I'm currently rereading the first two. I loved this book during my reread as much as I did the first time I read it however many years ago when I was younger. It's just a really good story. So it's sort of, honestly, it feels very My Hero Academia if you've watched that anime at all, but it is basically set in a superhero society where a bunch of people have superpowers. This follows Nova, who is a villain, and she really hates the Renegades, who are the superheroes in the society, and she ends up sneaking into their society to work with them, to get to know them and kind of go undercover. And she ends up meeting Adrian, who is a renegade and is the son of like the big boss, like basically like the mayor of the city and like the top renegade. And it's so good. It is a YA like sci-fi fantasy, I would say, but it is so much fun. The writing is so easy to read but really good as well. I want to say like I rated this like 4 stars, but I loved it so much. Also, I rated this one 5 stars. Next, I read the book that I am reading with a group of people at work for a book club, and that is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. Now, I had really high hopes for this. I was so excited. I voted for this book specifically because I was so excited about it, and I've heard so many good things, and I just did not particularly care. I think I rated this one 2 out of 5 stars. And honestly, I just really found the main character, Autumn, to be really insufferable. And I know that she's really young and that she's supposed to read as young because this is a YA contemporary. But I don't know, I feel like I've read a lot of other YA contemporaries and I'm not pissed off at the fact that they're young. But Autumn was just like really annoying. I didn't really care about Finn either, like her best friend, and because I didn't care particularly about either of the characters, I didn't like the ending with this. I was expecting it to really make me sob, but it didn't hit me. And also, like, you're told what's gonna happen like at the beginning of the book, which just like takes away any impact in my eyes. I don't know, it could have still been really well done, but I did not like the writing. I didn't like the characters. I wouldn't say like I hated the characters, but I really just didn't care about them at all, which I think is necessary for this book to really hit as hard as it did with like other people. Then lastly in March, I read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I read this on Kindle Unlimited and I'm so excited because it's been traditionally published now. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. I think this is like some of the most beautiful writing I've ever read. Like, I loved reading this. Like, just the experience of reading Sarah Parker's writing was just in and of itself and like amazing. I loved every second. It is a fantasy romance that has dragons, but it's not like Fourth Wing. So if you're looking for something like Fourth Wing, this isn't it, but it is still very, very good. The magic system is absolutely incredible. The main character is an assassin for, I can't remember the name of the organization, but basically like an organization against the royalty. Then one day she ends up getting caught and she's kind of like thrust into this other part of the world, and there is a whole bunch of like backstory that we end up learning. I don't want to like say too much more, but like it was beautiful. I loved it so much. I really, really liked the characters, and I really like the mystery that was like at the back of everything. I was like, I just need to know what is going to happen. I think it's going to be a series, so there was some left open to kind of try and figure out later on down the track, but I'm really, really excited for where this series is headed. And I will say, getting into this, I read a lot of fantasy, I feel like, but I did initially sort of struggle with the first like 100 or so pages because the world is really, really expansive. It is a lot to take in, and there's a lot of different like fantasy language going on. It is, you're learning about different creatures, different places, different people, different organizations, like all crammed into like one kind of portion. But once you sort of like get that and understand that, it is everything. It is so good. And it does have a glossary in it as well, so when this book comes out, I do highly recommend using the glossary. I use the glossary a lot of the time to figure out like what things were and what was going on a lot of the time. That really helped me. I cannot wait for this to properly come out. I think it's probably coming out in like this month, May. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I've already got like 2 different editions on pre-order because I love this book so much. Next up are all of the books that I read in the month of April. I will have a reading vlog coming out that covers a lot of these books, so keep an eye out for that one really, really soon. First off, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This was very, very hyped up last year, but I've only just gotten around to reading it. But this follows 2 journalists who are on the same side of the war, but they have magical typewriters, and they end up communicating and getting to know each other through these typewriters as well. And they work for the same like paper company as well. And I suppose like in that sense, like they're rivals, but I would say that this is like light on the enemies to lovers. If that's what you're after, like you're not gonna get what you want out of this. The writing was gorgeous and the characters were really, really interesting, and I loved their dynamic and their relationship. The fantasy aspect of this was very, very light. Like, I would say that this felt more like a historical romance than a fantasy romance, but also like there is a fantasy aspect to it. So it's a bit of a hard one to place, but this mostly just has a really, really beautiful romance between these 2 characters and them getting to know each other. And I actually forgot as well, but I have read Rebecca Ross before and I loved her writing then as well. It was The Queen's Rising. This was her debut, and I've decided I want to reread this now because I loved this so much, and I remember eating this up, and I just like didn't put 2 and 2 together that these were the same author. And so I think I'm gonna have to reread this series as well because I loved this series when it came out like a few years ago, and I'm going to finish this one soon. I'm so excited. The next lot of books are all books that I read during the reading vlog that will be coming out really soon. I read a whole bunch of new releases and it was so much fun. And so the first one that I read for that was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and oh my god, this was my first ever Abby Jimenez book, and I didn't realize that this was part of a series, technically, like the Part of Your World series, because when I looked on Goodreads it said it was a standalone, but that has been adjusted now. But like, regardless, this was 5 out of 5 stars so easily. I think this might be one of my new favorite books. I loved this. I was sobbing, like literally like guttural sobs, and I was laughing. I felt so much for these characters. It is about Justin, who posts onto Reddit one day saying that he has a curse where every woman he goes on a date with ends up meeting the love of her life immediately afterwards. And at first I was like, this is just like the plot of that movie from the 2000s called Good Luck Chuck, and it is so much more than that, well, from what I remember anyway. And then the female main character, Emma, she replies back and she's like, oh my god, I have the same thing. Every guy I end up dating meets the love of his life and his soulmate after me, and like, maybe we should break this curse. And so it's like a little bit of an internet meet cute on Reddit, and they start chatting and they decide to go on a few dates to try and break this curse and see if the next person that they date ends up being like the one for them. And obviously we know where this is going. Justin and Emma are the main characters. Things, yeah. Oh my god, I love this. And Justin is like the definition of if he wanted to, he would. Emma was just like the sweetest and most, like, she's really complicated. I don't know, like there's just something about Emma as a main character that really tugs at my heartstrings. I want to be her friend. I loved her so much, and I love Justin, and this was just, this is one of my favorite books of the year so far already, and I want to read more Abby Jimenez. It was amazing. Then after that, unfortunately, things took a little bit of a turn for the worse. I read How Does It Feel by Janine O'Reilly. I was so excited for this book. I thought at best it's going to be a really great fae fantasy romance and I can get like sucked into this new series, and then at worst it's just like a silly little like fantasy romance that like I'm not super attached to, but it'll be a fun time. It was neither of those. I ended up rating this one 1 star. I really did not care for the main character Callie, or any of the characters I should say in this book. The plot wasn't really enough to keep me going either, and the writing, don't talk to me about the writing. If you want a laugh, watch my vlog where I read this, because like I might have torn this to shreds a little bit, but like I was really not enjoying my time reading this. The writing is awful. I mean, I think it's awful. Anyway, if I was Callie, who is a biologist, and on her own project she ends up going to the forest and falling down a fae portal and ends up coming face to face with the Unseelie prince. And so there's Seelie and Unseelie fae in here as well, and then there's like trials. It felt like a bunch of tropes and plot points that I have read like so many times over in other books before, but in like a way that was so much worse. I can't even describe it to you. I personally found the like massive plot twist that everybody was talking about to be, I half predicted it. I didn't get it completely right, but it was so underwhelming. I'm not gonna lie. I was really expecting to be like, holy shit, this is like mind-blowing, but like it was fine, I guess. Like it wasn't anything special, and it wasn't anything to keep me like wanting to continue this series. And then I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I have mixed feelings about this because I think my expectations for this were way too high because I have wanted to read Elsie Silver for ages. I still haven't read Flawless, but this one, like, it was like a 3-star. Like, it maybe a 2.5 or 3-star. Like, it was fine. There wasn't necessarily anything inherently wrong with it. It's just, it really disappointed me. I didn't particularly care about the love interest or the main character at all. And honestly, like, the first half of the book really just pissed me off in a lot of ways as well. This follows Ford Grant, who is a billionaire, and he goes back to his hometown to set up a recording studio, and then he ends up coming face to face with like a 12-year-old girl who claims that Ford is her father, and so he has to kind of grapple with that and figure out that as well. And then Rosie, who used to be childhood friends with Ford, comes back into town as well after being sexually assaulted at her job. That's in like the first like 15 pages. Also, just so you know, there is sexual harassment here on the page as well. And she goes back to her hometown after being fired from her job. Then they end up realizing that they have feelings for each other, and it's all like well and good, but I just really didn't like how a lot of the stuff was discussed in here. I did actually really enjoy the part with the kid, and I think that must be something that I enjoy in books in general, because I haven't read too many books that have like children as part of the plot, but every time I've read it, I have really enjoyed it. Actually, that's another one as well, Just for the Summer. I won't say in what way, but there are kids involved in this relationship as well, and it was so well done. It was so well done, and I really enjoyed it in this as well. It wasn't like done as good as Just for the Summer. In fact, I think a lot of my reading in April was probably ruined by Just for the Summer because it was so good. But Wild Love was, yeah, like, it was fine. It was just, my expectations were way too high, and I was really disappointed by this. But that's not to say that it's a bad book. I just think that I wanted more from this that I didn't end up getting. Then I read Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella after Powerless. This takes place at the same time as Powerless, and it follows Adina and a new character named Makoto. If anyone watched the vlog, you would know that I wasn't a huge fan of Powerless. I think I rated it 2 stars. I enjoyed this novella more than the original book, to be honest. And I don't know if it was like the characters or what, but I just really enjoyed the writing and everything a lot more in this. It was obviously very short, so there wasn't too much room for like a lot of development, but obviously taking that into account, yeah, I think I rated this 3 stars. It makes me excited for Reckless more, because I remember reading Powerless and the ending, and I'm like, okay, as much as I didn't really like vibe with this book, I'm going to continue the series because I'm intrigued by the ending. And this book, like the novella, this has me more intrigued for the next book now, because I think there's some really interesting stuff that has potential for the rest of the series that kind of like were touched upon in here. I don't know, like, I'm kind of excited for Reckless now, which I didn't think I would say, but here we are. Finally, the last book that I read in April. It wasn't like a 5-star read, but I still loved my time reading it, and that is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This follows Daphne, who is a librarian, and Miles. I loved it. I loved it so much. I don't think I love this one like as much as Book Lovers, but I really enjoyed my time reading this. In this, Daphne ends up getting broken up with by her fiance just after his bucks night, because he invited all of his best friends, and including his girl best friend, to his bucks night, and the female best friend Petra was like, oh, I'm in love with you and have been since we were children. And he's like, oh my god, I love you too, I'm gonna break up with my fiance. And so he dumps her and is like, hey, you have 1 week to get out of my house, which, wild. And so Daphne ends up accidentally kind of bumping into Miles, and he's like, hey, you've also recently been dumped. How about we move in together, because we both need a roommate and like help each other out, like pay the rent, you know? And so they end up moving in together, and then they end up fake dating. It's really, really fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just love Emily Henry's writing so much. There's just something that's so easy and it's so digestible, but it also brings up like certain things in relationships in like really good ways. And I love her characters, and I just really love Emily Henry in general. Okay, so they are all of the books that I ended up reading in the months of March and April. I feel like overall I've had a pretty kind of like mixed bag. Like I've had a lot of books that I really disliked and a lot of books that I really loved. But yeah, if I'm being completely honest with you, like Just for the Summer has probably ruined a lot of books for me that I'm going to be reading in the future, because almost nothing can compare to that. Like I loved it so much. But I am so happy with my reading, and I'm really excited to get stuck into my May TBR as well. Let me know what your reading month was like, or if you read any of these books as well, especially the new releases. Let me know your thoughts and feelings. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day or night, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.